My daughter didn't invite me to her wedding in Paris, the same wedding I paid to make possible. She mocked me, saying, "If you want to be a part of it, just zoom in on the church with Google Maps, haha." So I stayed away. The next morning I woke up to 99 missed calls. And an email that said, "Mummy, please. It's an emergency. I need you." Before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps share more stories with you. I raised my daughter Emily on my own, every sleepless night, every scraped knee, every tear. It was me there, not her father. He left us when she was still a baby, chasing a new life and leaving me to carry all the weight. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes skipping meals just to make sure she had enough. I thought she would grow up and see the sacrifices I made, that she would understand how much love I poured into her. But as Emily grew older, things began to change. She became distant, cold, like every effort I made wasn't enough. Sometimes when I looked at her, I wondered if she saw me as her mother or just the woman who raised her. Still, I kept going. Birthdays, graduations, every milestone I was there, clapping the loudest, smiling through the pain of being overlooked. Then one day, without warning, she sent me an email. Not a call, not a visit, an email. She told me she was getting married in Paris, the same wedding I had helped pay for with the savings I thought would one day buy me a little peace in life. But instead of inviting me, she wrote, "If you want to be a part of it, just zoom in on the church with Google Maps, haha." I stared at the screen, my chest burning with disbelief. All those years of sacrifice reduced to a joke in one cold sentence. My hands trembled as I typed back only 4 words. "Sure. Enjoy your day." The next morning my phone wouldn't stop buzzing, her name flashing again and again as if suddenly my presence mattered. But me? I was way too busy to pick up. At first I ignored the calls, convincing myself it was just her trying to rub the wedding in my face one last time. But she didn't stop. Morning, noon, midnight, the phone kept vibrating like it carried some secret she was too afraid to put in writing. I silenced it, placed it face down, yet a strange feeling gnawed at me. What could possibly make her so desperate after telling me to watch her wedding from a satellite window? By the 3rd day, even my neighbors noticed the constant ringing. One of them joked, "Looks like someone doesn't want to lose you," but they didn't know the truth. Emily had already pushed me away long ago. Still, something about the persistence unsettled me. Against my better judgment, I opened one of her frantic emails, and the words nearly knocked the breath out of me. "Mom, please, it's an emergency. I need you. Please pick up." My chest tightened. Emergency? After all the coldness, after years of pushing me aside, what could she possibly want now? I stared at the glowing screen, torn between anger and worry, between pride and the instinct that had guided me since the day I first held her. The instinct of a mother. I reached for the phone, but just as I was about to press call, another message came through. This one wasn't from her. It was from an unknown number, short and chilling. "If you don't come now, it might be too late for your daughter." My heart pounded as I read that message, my hands trembling so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Too late for my daughter? The words echoed in my head, louder than my anger, louder than the years of hurt. For all the bitterness between us, she was still my child, and nothing in this world could erase that bond. I finally picked up her next call. The moment her voice cracked through the speaker, I barely recognized it. Gone was the sharp, dismissive tone she often used with me. This was broken, desperate, terrified. "Mom, please." I didn't know who else to call. Her words tumbled out in pieces, sobs breaking them apart. She told me the wedding wasn't what I thought it was, that everything had spiraled out of control. She admitted she had been pushing me away because she thought her father's family could give her the life I couldn't, that marrying into money and influence would secure her future. But standing at the altar, surrounded by strangers who smiled too perfectly, she realized she had been nothing more than a pawn in their games. Her groom wasn't the man she thought he was. She had discovered something dark, just hours before the ceremony. And now they weren't letting her leave. "Mom, they're watching me. I can't get out of here. Please, please, I need you." The line went dead. I sat frozen, the weight of her confession crushing me. She was in Paris, trapped in a marriage she didn't want, surrounded by people who didn't care for her, and she had no one else to turn to but the same mother she once pushed aside. I looked around my quiet house, the silence deafening. Every instinct screamed at me to move, to act, to fight for her the way I always had. But I also knew, stepping into this meant stepping into a storm I might not survive. Still, she was my daughter. I began making calls, pulling every string I could, desperate to find a way to Paris before it was too late. The night I booked my flight to Paris, I didn't sleep a wink. My body was restless, my thoughts were racing. Every second I spent on the ground felt like a lifetime wasted, like Emily's cries were echoing from across the ocean, and I was too far to reach her. At the airport, I could barely keep my hands steady enough to hand over my passport. The woman at the counter smiled politely, not knowing my chest was burning with fear. What if I was too late? What if that last call was the final time I'd ever hear my daughter's voice? The flight itself was torture. Trapped in that seat, surrounded by strangers sipping wine and flipping through magazines, I stared out the small window, watching the clouds drift by while my mind replayed every word Emily had said. They're watching me. I can't get out. When the plane finally touched down, the air in Paris felt heavy, like the city itself was keeping secrets. I rushed through customs, ignoring the beauty around me, blind to the glittering lights and cobblestone streets. My phone buzzed the moment I stepped outside. Another unknown number. My stomach dropped. We know you're here. Stay away or you'll regret it. For a moment I froze, my legs rooted to the ground. How did they know I had arrived? Who exactly were they? I looked around, scanning faces in the crowd, but everyone looked ordinary, busy with their own lives. Still, my skin prickled with the feeling of being watched. I tightened my grip on my bag, the one that held the only thing I thought might protect me. A folder of old receipts, documents, and proof of every sacrifice I had ever made for Emily. Maybe useless, maybe priceless. I didn't know yet. I whispered to myself, "Hold on, Emily. I'm coming." And with that, I stepped into the heart of Paris, not knowing if I was walking into a rescue or a trap. Paris was alive, but to me it felt like a maze built to slow me down. The taxi driver barely spoke English, and when I showed him the address Emily had sent in her last frantic message, his face changed. He muttered something under his breath and shook his head. He drove me partway, then stopped in the middle of a narrow street lined with tall buildings and cafes, insisting he couldn't go further. "No safe," he repeated, pointing ahead, his eyes avoiding mine. He dropped my bag on the curb and sped off before I could protest. I stood there, alone, clutching the handle of my bag as curious eyes followed me from balconies above. I took a step forward, but then I noticed something. A black car parked at the corner, its tinted windows rolled up tight. When I moved, it moved. When I paused, it paused. I ducked into a bakery, pretending to buy something just to calm my nerves. The smell of fresh bread should have been comforting, but my stomach was twisted. Through the glass window I saw the car still waiting. Watching. I pulled out my phone to call Emily again, but her line went straight to voicemail. Instead, another text came through, this time from her. "Don't trust anyone. They know you're here. If you see them, don't let them follow you. Please hurry, Mom." My hands went cold. Who was them? And how had Emily gotten tangled in something so dangerous that strangers were now tailing me across Paris? I left the bakery through a side door, weaving through back streets, my bag growing heavier with every step. My heart pounded louder with each turn, as if the city itself was testing how far I was willing to go for my daughter. By the time I finally reached the district near the venue, I was exhausted, drenched in sweat, and shaking. The church bells in the distance told me the ceremony was already underway. But before I could take another step, a man in a dark suit blocked my path. His voice was low, calm, but his words sent chills racing down my spine. "Madam, you shouldn't be here. Go home while you still can." I froze, staring into the man's eyes. He wasn't threatening me outright, but there was something in his calmness that felt more dangerous than if he had shouted. His words lingered, heavy, final. "Go home, while you still can." But home? My home was wherever Emily was. I clenched my bag tighter, my voice barely steady as I whispered, "I'm not leaving without my daughter." His jaw twitched, almost like he expected that answer. He stepped aside, letting me pass, but the way he watched me as I walked away made it clear. This wasn't over. The streets grew quieter as I approached the venue. The grand church towered ahead, its bells echoing like a warning. I should have felt relief at finally finding it, but instead, a chill crept up my spine. The place didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a fortress. 2 guards stood by the doors in black suits, their eyes scanning everyone who entered. Bridesmaids in pastel dresses laughed nervously nearby, their smiles too forced, too stiff, as if they were part of something they didn't dare question. I slipped into the crowd, my heart hammering as I pulled the veil of a passing guest over my head, hoping to blend in. My palms were damp, my knees weak, but every step I took was powered by one thought: Emily needs me. Inside, the air was suffocating. The stained glass windows cast colored shadows over the pews, but the beauty of the place couldn't hide the tension. The guests weren't whispering with excitement, they were watching each other, measuring, calculating. This wasn't love. This was business. And then I saw her. Emily stood at the altar, her dress glowing under the golden lights, but her eyes told another story. They darted across the room, wide and fearful, until they landed on me. For the briefest second, I saw her lips part, a flicker of hope breaking through her panic. But before she could react, the groom leaned close, his hand tightening around hers. He whispered something in her ear that made her flinch, and that's when I knew whatever this wedding was, Emily wasn't safe. I took a step forward, my voice caught in my throat, but before I could call her name, a hand gripped my arm from behind. It was him again. The man in the dark suit. And this time he leaned in so close I could feel his breath against my ear as he murmured, "If you make a sound, you'll never see her again." Emily's eyes met mine again, and in that silent moment I could see it, the weight of a truth too heavy for her to carry alone. She didn't just look afraid, she looked trapped. And then, as the priest's voice droned on, her gaze flickered toward the front pews. That's when I noticed them. The groom's family sat together, their presence commanding the room like royalty. Their expressions were cold, almost rehearsed, each smile as sharp as glass. They didn't look like in-laws celebrating love, they looked like investors watching a deal close. And suddenly the puzzle began to piece itself together. Emily had told me in our broken phone call that she had found out something. And now I understood. The man she was about to marry wasn't who he pretended to be. His wealth, his charm, his promises of a bright future, they were all masks. Rumors had swirled quietly around his family for years, whispers of power built on corruption, businesses that looked clean on paper but were nothing more than fronts for darker dealings. But what Emily discovered the night before the wedding was far worse. The groom himself had been married before, in secret. His first wife hadn't vanished the way the tabloids claimed. She had died. And the circumstances were buried so deep, so carefully, that Emily would never have known, unless she had stumbled on the wrong document, the wrong photograph, the wrong truth. She had. She told me in a hurried voicemail that cut off midway, that she found a file hidden in his study, one that proved his family had silenced anyone who got in their way. Business partners, journalists, even his first wife. And now Emily knew too much. Marrying her wasn't about love. It was about control. About binding her to a family that wanted her silence guaranteed. At the altar, I saw the way the groom's hand pressed harder against hers, not with affection but with possession. And the way his mother's eyes flicked between Emily and the priest, sharp, watchful, daring her to resist. This wasn't a wedding. It was a cage. And as I stood there, the man in the dark suit's grip tightening on my arm, I realized, Emily hadn't just called me for comfort. She had called me because she knew I was the only one reckless enough, desperate enough, to pull her out of this alive. The priest's voice echoed through the church, steady and ceremonial, but beneath it, I could hear the ragged sound of Emily's breathing. She tried to keep her composure, tried to play the part of the perfect bride, but I could see her fingers twitching nervously against the groom's grip. When the priest asked, "Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the groom didn't hesitate. He smiled, confident, his voice smooth as silk as he said, "I do." The crowd murmured with approval, a wave of applause breaking out, but his eyes never left Emily's face. The smile was for show. His stare was a warning. Then it was her turn. The priest looked at Emily, his tone warm, expectant. "And do you, Emily, take this man?" Before he could finish, the groom leaned in closer, his lips brushing against her ear. I couldn't hear the words from where I stood, but I saw the way her body stiffened, the way her eyes widened in horror. Whatever he was, her lips parted, trembling, and for a moment I thought she would scream, that she would defy him right there in front of everyone. But then I saw it, his hand sliding under the bouquet she held, pressing something cold and metallic against her side, hidden from the guest's view. A gun. My blood ran cold. Emily froze, her voice caught in her throat. The priest repeated the question, his eyes flicking with unease as the silence stretched. The guests shifted in their seats, whispering. And then, with tears brimming in her eyes, Emily whispered so faintly it barely carried through the church. I do. The room erupted with claps and cheers, everyone blinded by the performance of a perfect wedding. But I saw the truth. I saw the fear carved into my daughter's face, the silent plea buried in her eyes. And as the priest declared them husband and wife, the groom bent to kiss her, not tenderly but like a man staking his claim. His family rose to their feet, satisfied, victorious. The man gripping my arm leaned closer, his voice a low growl. You see, it's done. She belongs to us now. But in that moment one thought burned hotter than all my fear. Not while I'm still breathing. The applause thundered in my ears, but to me it sounded like the clanging of prison bars closing shut. Emily stood frozen at the altar, her hand trapped in his, her smile so brittle I thought it might shatter. The man beside me loosened his grip just enough for me to breathe, thinking the wedding was over, thinking the fight was lost. But he didn't know me. He didn't know what it meant to be a mother who had fought alone all her life. I stayed still, my heart racing, waiting for the right moment. When the guests moved toward the reception hall, I slipped into the crowd, using the chaos to break free from the man's shadow. Every step was a battle. Guards lingered at every doorway, their eyes sharp, their movements rehearsed. But mothers know how to be invisible when it counts. I had spent years sacrificing, blending into the background so Emily could shine. Now I used that skill to get closer to her. At the reception the atmosphere was no better. The chandeliers glittered, the champagne flowed, but beneath the surface, everything felt staged, calculated. The groom's family laughed with icy precision, their voices like knives. Emily sat beside her new husband, her body stiff, her smile forced, her eyes glazed with fear. She was surrounded, caged in by people who wore masks of civility but radiated control. I circled the room, watching, planning. My chance came when the music swelled and guests crowded the dance floor. I moved quickly, slipping behind the table where Emily sat, my hand brushing against hers under the cloth. She flinched, then froze, then when she turned and saw me, tears filled her eyes. For the first time in years, I saw her look at me not with coldness, not with indifference, but with the raw, desperate need of a child calling for her mother. I leaned close, my voice barely a whisper. I'm here. We're leaving tonight. Her lips trembled as she mouthed, He'll kill me. No, I whispered back, pressing her hand tight, not while I'm breathing. But the groom noticed. His eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing across his face. He excused himself from the table and walked toward us, his smile stretching wide for the guests but his gaze sharp as a blade. I pulled back before he reached her, melting into the crowd. My pulse pounded in my ears as I darted toward the side hallway, and there I found him again, the man in the dark suit. Only this time he didn't stop me. Instead he whispered, There's a car waiting at the back. Take her. Don't waste time. I froze, confusion swirling. Why are you helping me? His eyes flickered with something I hadn't expected, guilt. Because I stood by once when his first wife begged me to save her. I won't make that mistake again. Without another word he slipped away. The plan was dangerous, reckless, but it was the only chance. I returned to Emily, my hand brushing hers again. When I stand, follow me. Don't look back. The band struck up a new song, the guests laughed and clapped, and I rose. Emily hesitated only a second before pushing back her chair. The groom's hand shot out to grab her wrist, but she pulled away, her eyes flashing with a strength I hadn't seen in years. For the first time she chose me. Gasps filled the hall as we moved quickly toward the side doors. Shouts erupted, chairs scraped, footsteps thundered behind us. My heart slammed in my chest as we raced through the corridor, every corner echoing with pursuit. We burst out into the cold night air, the waiting car already rumbling with its engine on. The man in the suit stood by the door, his face grim. Go. Don't stop until you're far from here. Emily slid inside and I followed. The tires screeched as the driver pulled away, the mansion shrinking in the distance, voices shouting in fury behind us. Emily clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder, whispering over and over, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I held her tight, my tears soaking into her veil. It doesn't matter. You're safe now. That's all that matters. But as the city lights blurred past us, I knew this wasn't the end. That family wouldn't let her go so easily. The groom wouldn't forgive this humiliation. And somewhere deep down I understood, escaping Paris was just the first battle. The war for my daughter's freedom had only just begun. The car sped through the narrow Parisian streets, every turn feeling like it might be our last. Emily clung to me, trembling, her tears soaking through my dress. Behind us I could see the headlights of black cars giving chase, shadows of the groomsmen determined to drag us back. But I wasn't about to run forever. No, I hadn't survived years of raising Emily alone just to spend the rest of my life hiding from them. I had something they didn't know I carried. From my bag I pulled out the folder I'd packed before leaving, years of receipts, letters, and records that proved every sacrifice I made to raise Emily. But hidden in the folds were copies of the documents Emily had stumbled upon, the ones that exposed the groom's family for what they really were. When she whispered the details to me during those frantic calls, I knew the only way to save her wasn't just to escape, it was to bring them down. Emily, I whispered, holding her face in my hands, they can't hurt you once the world knows the truth. Her eyes widened, hope flickering through her fear. But how? I looked at the driver, the man in the dark suit, the one who had chosen to help us. He met my gaze in the rearview mirror, a silent understanding passing between us. Without a word, he veered off the road, heading not for an airport, not for a safe house, but straight to the police headquarters. By the time the black cars caught up, it was too late. I had already placed the evidence in the hands of the authorities. Emily, her voice shaking but fierce, gave her statement about the threats, about the gun hidden under her bouquet, about the first wife whose death was no accident. The groom's family tried to intervene, their lawyers storming the station with their polished arrogance. But the weight of the documents, the photos and the testimonies crushed their lies. News broke within hours. Headlines flashed across Paris and beyond. Influential family exposed in shocking scandal. Bride escapes forced marriage tied to crime syndicate. The empire they built on fear and silence began to crumble, brick by brick, under the glare of the world's eyes. Emily and I stood side by side as the groom was led away in handcuffs, his smile finally stripped away, his eyes burning with the realization that he had lost. His family looked on, their power gone, their control shattered. When it was over, Emily turned to me, her voice breaking as she whispered, "You saved me. After everything, you still saved me." I held her close, my heart heavy with years of pain but lighter than it had ever been. That's what mothers do. No matter how far you run, no matter how hard you push us away, when you call, we come. As the sun rose over Paris, casting light on a city that had nearly swallowed us whole, Emily slipped her hand into mine. For the first time in years, she wasn't just my daughter by blood or by obligation, she was my daughter by choice. And this time, nothing and no one would take her from me again. Sacrifice isn't always appreciated until the storm comes. You can give your all to someone and they may still reject you, but when life tests them, they'll remember who truly stood by them. Mockery often turns into regret. People who belittle or push away those who love them most often find themselves running back when reality shatters their illusions. A parent's worth isn't measured by invitations. Even if children shut the door, the foundation you laid in their lives is something no one else can replace. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories.